Welcome to the Good Mood Show. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you get a good mood every single week. And today we are talking with Emily Sander. Emily is a C-suite executive and founder of Next Level Coaching. She was on the original testing team for the Kindle, which I'm a big fan of. She's been part of small startups, and she's also the author of 2 books, including her smash hit, Hacking Executive Leadership. In this book, Emily discusses the failure loop. And today, she will be sharing about how we can never fail again. It's a bold claim, but feeling like a failure is certainly the opposite of being in a good mood. So learning today about how to never fail again will help you keep your good moods and good vibes going as you strive to stretch and grow and become all you can be. I'm so excited for this show. Emily, welcome to the Good Mood Show.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Pleasure to be on.
So when I saw you say we could never fail again, I was intrigued. And I know you have a free gift for our audience. You're going to be sharing a PDF on this groundbreaking topic. You have the failure loop. If you're not a subscriber to the Good Mood Show newsletter yet, no worries. You can download a copy of that failure loop instantly at goodmoodshow.com. Just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get an instant download, or reach out on the contact page and we'll send it over. But Emily, how can we possibly expect to never fail again if we're still alive?
Sure. So the failure loop is a great framework to reframe failure. So most of the time when you hear the word failure or, oh, I failed at something, you have a very negative connotation. It's like, oh, that was when I didn't do the presentation as well as I thought, or, oh no, like that decision did not go the way I intended it. And now I have to admit to myself and to other people that I made a mistake. So the initial connotation is negative. However, if you see it in context for what it is, you can transform it into success. So the failure loop, and again, I'll have a 1-pager and a graph that goes along with this, but the failure loop has a graphic, and it's a chain of individual loops strung together, and the overall chain goes up and to the right. And up and to the right is the direction of progress. So we're all trying to grow and learn and be better people. That's the direction of progress, up and to the right. However, there's a section in an individual loop that goes back down and to the left. So you're going woof, like you're going, oop, I went back down and I have to propel myself back up. So the part of the loop that goes back down and to the left is what most people consider a failure event. So when you get that gut punch of like, oh, that does not feel good. That is egg on my face in front of everybody. A lot of people stop there. A lot of people stop there and or berate themselves or just drown in their pools of pessimism in that moment, and they linger there. And if instead you say, okay, let me take a hard look at this, let me take the lessons or learning out of it and apply them going forward. So apply them to the next situation, I run into the same thing. You've just propelled yourself up the failure chain to the next individual loop. So if you think about that, if you do that over and over and over again throughout your life, you're going to be a successful person. So I work with my clients on reframing failure so they're not scared of it, because being scared of it holds you back, and instead saying, be on that growth edge, like stretch yourself, push yourself, because whenever you do that, every time you do that, you are a successful person. And that's the marker of a successful person.
I was watching the movie The Secret, or no, it was the movie Think and Grow Rich. There was I guess made for computer movie, Think and Grow Rich. And it starts out with a scene of a young boy who comes home from school and he's just got this look of a total failure. And he's holding this letter that's been sealed with wax from a candle, like it's got the red seal on it. And he's got his head down and he hands the letter to his mom, and his mom opens the letter and you can tell she's got a bad look on her face. And then she perks up and she says, the teachers at this school have identified you as talented and gifted. You are too smart for their schooling. They have asked that I myself teach you. And the young boy sits up straight. He gets kind of excited, and he's like, man, that's not what I thought the letter said. I thought the letter said I was getting kicked out of school because I wasn't smart enough to be here. So his mom homeschooled him. And this ended up being Thomas Edison. And
Ah,
Thomas Edison went on to invent the light bulb. And he's got, this famous quote of inventing the light bulb where everyone asked him, hey, you failed 1,000 times before you ended up inventing this light bulb. And he said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb invention just had 1,000 steps.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so his mom taught him this failure loop at a young age. And at the end of the movie, it shows him as an old man finding that letter and reading the original letter and
Oh,
thinking so
wow.
fondly of his mom and how she had reframed that failure of getting kicked out of school. And he did get kicked out of school because he couldn't pay attention.
Yeah. I haven't seen that movie. I'll have to check it out. That's awesome.
Yeah, but isn't that the failure loop, right?
It is. Well, I mean, it's also like really good and creative parenting on the mom's part to write that letter and kind of reframe pulling him out of school. But yes, I mean, we can do this all over the place and it should make us feel good. So that's why I didn't hesitate to be on the Good Mood show and have a topic of failure, is because if you don't have to be scared of something anymore, or you can at least be scared of it less, that's a reason to be in a good mood. And today, I've, through aggressive self improvement and training, I've trained myself to look forward to those things and look forward and look for those moments of, where do I have that cocktail of like fear and excitement, and you just down it, and then you're off to the races. So I've trained myself to look for it, and now I look forward to it.
So I read this quote in Ed Milet's book, and it was, God gives you butterflies in your stomach to show you what you should be doing.
Ooh.
And I just loved it. I'm like, wow, because you get butterflies in your stomach, like you're super nervous to give the
Mhm.
big speech, to get in front of the people, to have the hard conversation, or, like that's the butterflies, it's the nervousness. And he said, yeah, those butterflies are given to you as a signal of what you're supposed to do next. And I've got a 5-year-old named Kelly, and she was really afraid to meet new people. Like, but COVID, right? When she was 2,
Right.
so she didn't have a chance to go meet new people. And everyone she did met had a mask on. And so she was trained from a young age not to trust anyone. And so, she'd be really shy on a playground and not want to go say hi to somebody. And I was trying to encourage her to go meet these new people, and she just wouldn't. I remember she got the wrong ice cream. We were at the ice cream shop, and she got the wrong ice cream and she didn't like it. And she's like, I didn't order this. And I said, well, I bet if you just take your ice cream back up to the counter, she'll give you the right ice cream. And she couldn't do it. She was going to suffer and have no ice cream.
Wow.
And this girl loves ice cream. She would
Yeah.
suffer and have no ice cream because she was too afraid to take her cup back to the counter. And so I told her that quote from Ed Milet, and I said, Kelly, what's that feeling you get when you feel afraid to go meet somebody? And I'm like, is it like butterflies in your stomach? And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, God gives you that feeling right before you're about to have a great time. And she's like,
That's
okay.
awesome.
And so I said, every time you feel that feeling of that nervousness, those butterflies, God's saying, hey, you're about to have an amazing time. So her first day of school happened on the last school season. I warned her. I said, hey, you're going to feel this feeling. And what's it mean? She's like, I'm going to have a good time. And I said, yeah. She comes home from school just beaming, just smiling ear to ear. And she's like, Dad, I introduced myself to 2 kids on the playground. I got 2 new friends. And I was so proud of her. So why is it that we feel so amazing when we feel that feeling of failure and we push through anyway?
Humans are meant to be challenged. They're not, people like to be challenged. So in the right ways and in the right degrees, but people don't like to be complacent or to have things easy all the time. People might think that, but in reality, they find the greatest sense of accomplishment and confidence in themselves when they do something, especially when they do something they didn't think they could do and they overcome it. That's when we feel alive and feel fully alive. So I always tell, when I was managing teams in the corporate world, yes, my job as a manager is to be supportive and to be encouraging and make sure they have the tools and resources they need. My job as a leader is to also challenge my team members in the right way and push them to grow in the right way. Because if I'm not doing everything I possibly can to foster their growth and make them step into their potential, then I'm not doing my job. And so part of it is pushing people and pushing yourself.
When's the last time you had something you were really afraid to fail at?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, doing podcast guest spots, to be honest, I've come a long, long way on that journey. So it was sweat and quivery voice and pure nervousness for the whole morning before I would get on a show. And then afterward, I would ruminate on it and think of all the things that I said wrong or not the right way and jump on the hamster wheel and go on that for a while. And now I've reframed it and I've just trained myself to say, hey, this is one, your growth edge. So it's good for you personally, but also you can connect with people and you can talk to people, and you can give people valuable insight and advice, and that's your job. So that's your job, is to raise up and develop leaders, and this is a great way to do that.
Woo! And look at how good you are.
Thank you. Yeah, it's come a long way. Still
The
more to
world,
go, but
the
thank
world
you.
wouldn't have your brilliance if you didn't overcome this fear of failure. I mean, some people would, but the people listening to this show wouldn't have it. And so, yeah, no, that's a real honest answer, that the nervousness. So why do you think we get this physical reaction of sweating and fear? What is that from? Just to jump on a podcast, why do you think that we feel that way? What is that?
Our brains connect it to fear of death. So if you're fearing for your survival, you're going to start to sweat and your voice is going to get quivery. So let me explain that. So jumping on a podcast to me at the beginning meant other people judging me. So it was like, oh, I want to do good. I want to do well, and I want to say the right things, and I want to sound professional, and I want to sound, casual and breezy at the same time. And so all these different things, it was very self-centered. So if you heard that statement, I want this, and how am I doing? How's it going for me? It's all very self-centered. And the fear in my brain goes, if people judge you and they don't like you, they're going to kick you out of the tribe, and without the tribe, you can't survive. And in the wilderness, you're going to die. So that's a very like a reptilian kind of back in the caveman type days mentality, but that's often what our brain does. So a lot of people are like, I know intellectually I shouldn't feel that way in a certain situation, but I can't help it. Like my body reacts a certain way or I get a certain emotion. That's when your amygdala, which is like your reptilian survival part of your brain, is at odds with your neocortex, which is the newest part of our brain. And it's the one that has executive function and can say, okay, I don't really need to be scared of that. So I've done a lot of work on this with my coaches, and it peels back to, at the end of the day, my brain equated speaking on podcasts to the fear of death. And that's why I got so nervous. So once I unplugged that and rewired it, I'm much better now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, that's how we came up in tribes, right? And if you said the wrong thing to the wrong tribal member and you were an outcast, you literally would die, because we
Mhm.
couldn't survive without each other. So
Yes.
so that's this fear of public speaking. I've seen a list of fears, and it's the fear of public speaking is higher than the fear of death itself.
Yep. There's that. I think it was on Seinfeld where he was doing the joke that, at a funeral, people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. So
Right.
um,
Right. Yeah. And that, getting up in front of everybody and saying the wrong thing could have literally been your death. It's interesting when we start to pull it back that way. And I am going to be publishing my book, which is Conquering Bad Moods. And one of the bad moods to conquer is fear. And there was an acronym I heard from a football player, and he said, I'd get so nervous before my games, I would throw up.
Yeah.
I'd get so nervous, I would physically throw up before every game. He said, I had a coach that came to me and said, man, if you're not nervous, you're not ready. You know what fear stands for? And he's like, what? He said, feeling excited and ready.
Oh, I love that.
Well, he flipped the phrase, the feeling of being so nervous before the game, of like, oh man, this means I'm ready. I get to use this excitement, which is what nervousness is. It's just nervousness is like anticipation without joy, where excitement is anticipation with joy.
And a
So
lot of the same things are happening, like you just said, like the physical manifestations. If you compare, anxious with fear, you have a lot of the similar, like, my heart races and I, become more attentive and alert and all these things. So it could go both ways. So I love that you can channel it into enthusiasm or excitement.
I'm excited. Yeah. So then he was like ready to go knock people down
Yeah.
and win the game, because he was using that. That's what fear is, arming us with this adrenaline in our body, these chemicals that help us get into fight or flight. Right. So if we can use that energy and channel it in a positive way, but it's this conversation that helps us do that. I was really afraid to fail. And I had hired a coach to help me with it. And my coach was like, I think I had set some giant goal, like, hey, my company will sell 300 million in sales this year. And I was just really afraid about it. Like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody about it because I don't want to not hit it. And he's like, what are you afraid about? I'm like, oh, I don't know. And he said, well, let's figure it out. What are you really afraid about? And we figured out I was afraid to say I would do something and then look bad in the eyes of others.
Hmm.
I was so afraid of what other people thought of me.
Yep. It's a common one. I mean, we're human and we're social animals, and we often, like in today's world. So in today's world, we don't really have to worry about, the saber-toothed tiger killing us. But our brains are still wired where we think of our identity and our reputation as like our actual survival. And so when something threatens that, we have very similar reactions. So yeah, and I heard this, I'm gonna get this quote wrong, but someone said, in your 20s, you're like so worried about what people think of you. And in your 40s, you learn like not to care as much. And in your 60s, you realize no one was thinking about you the whole time. They were all in their own worlds, and you were projecting that. So
I I
there's
agree
that
with that.
element too.
I agree with that quote. Yeah, like what I wear, or if I have a pimple on my face, or like all of that is hyper important in our teens and 20s. It was for me for sure. Like I wanted to fit in, I wanted to make sure that I was cool, that I was popular. In my case, I wanted to be super successful. I wanted everyone to see that I was super successful, that I was the best. I had what you just identified for me is beautiful. I hadn't thought of that. I had an identity of always achieving.
Yeah.
And so to uphold this identity of always winning and succeeding, I was probably playing smaller than I could have been.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're listening to this, ask yourself right now, if you knew that you couldn't fail, if you knew that everything you would do would be successful, what would you do differently? What would you go out and start today? It takes the time and hard work, but you knew it would be successful. To most people, that opens up a whole bunch of doors and a whole bunch of possibilities. Oh, okay. Well, if I know I'm going to be a rousing success, or that venture is going to turn out great, then let me get started today. And so that's just a quick exercise to see how much the fear of failure can hold us back.
I love that question. And so if you're listening to this show, really contemplate what Emily has invited you to think about. If you knew you could not fail, what would you do? What is in your heart? What is your heart calling to you to try that this fear of failure in the eyes of others may be holding you back? I asked myself that question a few years ago, and I said, man, if I knew I couldn't fail, what would I do? And I said, man, I'd start the Good Mood Show podcast.
Ah, and
And
here we are.
yeah, and here we are. But what was holding me back from having, this wonderful conversation with you today was, well, what if nobody cares? What if nobody listens? What if I put all this time and energy in, and then I find out that, you know, nobody thought any of my ideas were any good anyway?
It's interesting how we both overcame different fears and then are having this conversation. That's beautiful in its own way.
Yeah. Well, you're putting yourself out, like you're putting yourself out there. I'm putting myself out there for the world to judge or
Mm.
not care about. So for me,
Yeah.
it wasn't judgment. It was indifference.
Ambivalence.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah. Okay. He's got that show. It's great.
Yeah.
Thankfully the show's extremely successful, and because you're here, it's going to be even more successful, and we're making a difference every day. Hundreds of people get to tune in and feel good about themselves. One of my favorite stories about failure is Sarah Blakely. Have you read anything about how she was raised?
No.
Sarah was raised, her dad raised her to celebrate failure.
Ah.
So when she was a child, he would say, she'd come home from school, and most parents are like, I have kids, they come home, I say, hey, how was your day? Did you do anything fun? Anything silly happen? These are my types of questions I'll ask my kids. What'd you do well? How'd you do on your test? Well, her dad asked a totally different question. He said, what did you fail at today?
Mm.
And he asked her that question over and over and over. And anytime she said she tried something and failed, he celebrated like crazy.
Wow.
He was like, you did it. You went for it. So
Wow. That's
she tells
awesome.
this story of she had never gone out for cheerleading and had no interest in it, but her dad was going to go nuts for her if she tried it and didn't make the team. So she goes out for cheerleading and fails miserably. Like, just total flop. All these other kids have been gymnastics their whole life, and she's trying to do the moves and just like probably making a fool of herself in front of all the most popular girls in school. And she comes home, and her dad he makes her a cake and takes her out for ice cream. And he's just like, that is awesome. You failed so epically on that, but way to go for it. Well, what that did for her is she ended up taking a job that also had tremendous failure, which is a job I had. She sold fax machines
Mm.
with Pitney Bowes. So I used to sell copy machines. That was my first job out of school. And I sold Pitney Bowes fax machines too. But you basically call people and say, would you like a new copy machine? And they're like, no. Click.
Oh.
It's your job over and over and over and over. And who cares about their copy machine or their fax machine, right? Fax machines don't even exist anymore. But so this job also taught her it's okay to ask people for things and them to say no. And she was bold enough to ship this pair of pantyhose she had cut the legs off of to Oprah. And she ships it to Oprah, just like whatever. Oprah could never care about it, but she ships it to her. And then Oprah wears the Spanx,
Yep.
her first prototype version. And then on the show, she's like, I've got these on. And then boom, she just totally blew up. She became the first self-made billionaire female in history because she wasn't afraid to fail.
I knew the second part of that story. I hadn't heard the first. That's fantastic. And what an amazing, again, an amazing parenting job by her dad. But I love that question. What did you fail at today, and then celebrate it, which makes me think of the power of our questions. So the power of the questions we get asked and the power of the questions we ask ourselves. So, for instance, when you were saying, what if no one listens and what if no one cares? Who is out there who's waiting to hear my message? Who needs to hear this? We often put a projector screen in our head and play a movie that's just like, here's how I'm going to fail and here's what people are going to think and judge me on. And instead, it's like, okay, if I'm going to play a movie and I'm in charge of it, I might as well do my highlight reel where like I'm a rousing success and everyone loves it and I'm really good at it. It takes the same amount of energy. So that's another point that you made me think of.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So this movie though shows up because of that survival mechanism. The bad movie does.
Yeah.
And the good movie shows up because we choose to replace the bad movie.
Yeah.
Asking ourselves better questions.
And it's also, if you're in fear of being alive, reassuring yourself, I'm safe. Like, hey, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. I got this, I got this. And just kind of letting that move through you. And then you kind of come back to your higher level of thinking and say, okay, let me think about this with my rational mind. And that can be helpful too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes we have a right to be afraid. Like when somebody says, let's go skydiving.
Yeah, yeah, you're jumping out of a plane and gravity works. So
And if we fail on that one, there's no coming back.
ooh, pull that chute. Make sure you know how to do that chute. Oh,
I did. So my wife took me skydiving for my birthday the first year we were together. And I'd never asked her to go skydiving. I'd never mentioned that I wanted to go skydiving because I didn't. And I wake up the morning of my birthday and she like wakes me up super early. And she says, hey, I've got a birthday present for you. Happy birthday. And I opened this little package and she had taken a picture of two people skydiving and pasted my face on it and her face. And I'm like, oh, that's a cute picture.
We should put it on the mantle, but we're not doing this. Yeah.
He's
The
like,
not wanting to skydive is a logical choice, Matt. So I am not happy about heights. So skydiving is not the way to go for me. But
yeah,
um,
because you could die, right? So,
mhm.
so part of this fear is good. There's healthy fear. Like if something could kill you for real,
Yeah.
we have a right to respect it. Now sometimes doing something like pushing through a fear like that can open up new things. So I did skydive. I was terrified. The plane goes so freaking slow. You've got like 20, 30 minutes of it ascending in circles to just be terrified about what's going to happen. And
Anticipation.
then the
Boom.
door opens and just the wide open sky is there and you're like, what are we doing right now? This is not so. And then you're out.
Yeah. I have a client who skydives to relax, and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
how, like, why? And he's like, because I can think of nothing else. And I was like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. Because yes, when you're free falling to the earth, everything else probably goes out the window. And he said,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much clarity and just focus. So I mean, whatever works for you.
And then you get on the ground and you're flooded with so many positive emotions, like all these endorphins, because you just survived something that you shouldn't have survived. And so that euphoria is pretty cool. That's the thing is though, those thrill seekers, you never get that same high again. Like you have to keep pushing the challenge like harder and harder and harder and make it more and more and more death defying. That's why if all of these documentaries of people climbing these mountains without ropes, they don't end well.
Yeah. Know your limits. So respect fear. Fear has its place. It's trying to keep you alive. And that's the other thing when your brain goes crazy with something. There is a part of it like, thank you. Like, I know you're trying to look out for me. Thank you, but we're good here. Like, we're good. Thank you.
But we're good. Yeah, meeting new people is not going
Yeah.
to kill me.
Yeah.
Saying something silly on a podcast or up in front of a group, I'm not going to die from that. Yeah, one of my biggest, most public failures was I've got a company of real estate professionals, and I own the company, and we had this giant party at a baseball game, and 500 people, all of my friends and family and clients and all the people I work with all came to the baseball game, and they said, Matt, you're going to throw out the first pitch. And I played baseball in high school. So I'm like, okay, cool. Right. But then when I went down to walk onto the field, that reflux of fear just my whole everything, you talk about the sweating and the cracking voice. Well, like I was trembling walking out to the mound and I picked up the baseball and all the people I care about looking good in
Wow.
front of, right, are all staring at me. And I threw the pitch right in the dirt.
You did.
And I felt like the biggest failure,
Oh no.
right? And so I didn't use your failure loop. I have never gone back out in front of everybody to throw a baseball.
Well, it might be in that case, like, hey, your family and friends are probably still your family and friends. So taking that learning and lesson, like, hey, like they might make fun of you or crack a joke here and there, but that's a endearing way to build camaraderie with people sometimes is to like be like, look how hard I failed.
Wow. Yeah, I never actually have shared that story on a podcast or with everybody, but they all saw it anyway. I just love the way you just reframed it. Like, hey, maybe your lesson there was to see that you can like do what you think is a total failure in front of the eyes of others and they still love you.
Yeah,
Like,
500 of them.
yeah, can't we just say the wrong thing sometimes and then people still love us?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I had like 10 years ago, we had an annual risk summit our company put on, and we hosted it in London in this very fancy hotel. And I was speaking, I was giving one presentation, and there were like only like 250 people in the room. But to me at that time, I had never spoken in front of that many people. And
250 is a lot of people.
yeah, okay, thank you. So our marketing director, who was the event planner, God bless her, she knew about my sweating issue. And so she planted a fan underneath the podium and she pointed it at an angle. And so she was like, Emily, walk in the stream of the fan so you can always have cool air blowing on you, but come out of the podium, like get out in front of people, go back, check your notes. And I just remember, okay, even my like sweating can bring out like creative solutions for people. I'll always love Cassandra. Like she and I had a hilarious time talking about it later, and it was just a funny memory. So those things can have their silver linings and put you in a good mood in different ways.
And then look at what's happened, from that, from you stepping outside of your comfort zone is that, each one of these successes of I'm super afraid to talk in front of 250 people, but I'm going to figure out a way to do it with this fan and my friends supporting me. And then you can build on that, right?
Yeah.
Each time we do something we were afraid of, can't we just build on it?
Yes, and that's a great point too, because every time you do that, it gets a little bit easier. So, right, when you're at the beginning and you're like, this is so hard, like this is a mountain and I have to get myself revved up to speak in front of people, like, yes, like that's your experience today. But know that it can be very, very different in a month, in 6 months, in a year from now, if you stick with it. If you put those reps in and get that experience, it could be like, all right, I'm going to jump on a podcast. Um, how did you do that? I don't know. How did you brush your teeth this morning? How did you tie your shoe? You just do it.
Yeah, because I've got all the reps in.
Hmm.
I put the very first time it is pretty terrifying. And the second time it's still terrifying. And then the third time it's a little less terrifying. And I think that's just how it is. I remember I was reading a book by Grant Cardone, and he was talking about being on video. And he said, your first videos you ever do are going to suck.
Yeah.
He's like, they're going to be awful. But he said, but I don't care how much you plan and prepare. It's going to suck no matter what. So just go ahead and get on video and do it a bunch of times. And then you're going to get pretty good at it. So, but
If
that's,
you go
isn't that the way we do anything though? Like,
anything, and I've heard other people like Brendan Burchard said that too. And if you go back and like scroll through YouTube videos of someone who's really polished and really professional now, their first videos are very different. And then you see them progress. It's like, oh, and that gives me hope because I'm like, I'm glad they kept those on there and didn't delete them because they weren't as polished because that's just like, okay, they're a human too, and they had to go through a process too. And because they could and they started there, I can as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I saw Brendan Burchard speak, and he put up a picture of his first ever speech he did. It was like 4 or 5 people and a bunch of empty chairs.
Yeah, it was like the in NFL, Tom Brady's like workout, his first combine. It's like, oh, what is happening? And then he becomes, one of the best
Yeah,
in
the
this.
greatest player of all time.
But he
Of
didn't look like it at the
No, he
beginning.
did. He didn't, but that's putting in the reps. And so I think that's a pretty cool thought about failure too, is this is just one of my steps to success.
Mhm.
So no, I'm not going to look like a 10-year vet on my first video. I'm not going to sound like the most polished speaker on my first podcast, but it is a step to me becoming that.
Yes, and in addition to that, I would say, you can look for at like Tony Robbins or Brendan Burchard or Grant Cardone for inspiration as like speakers or motivators, if you would like. That's great. Understand and know that you offer something to people that no one else can, that Grant Cardone can't, that Tony Robbins can't. Like you have a unique set of talents and backgrounds and stories and ways of saying something that only you can do. So that's when one of my speaking coaches at the very beginning was like, Emily, like you're trying to be someone else. I'm like, yes, I'm trying to imitate like this good speaker over here.
Yeah.
And he was like, don't do that. And I was like, well, why not? He's like, because there's only one of you. And it sounds corny, but the world needs you.
Oh, for
And,
sure. Some
and
people don't like Tony Robbins.
yeah,
People don't like Grant Cardone. A lot of people don't like Grant Cardone. And some people don't like Brendan Burchard. And some people are going to only hear the same type of story with your spin on it to where it gets in.
yes. He said, you can reach people that they can never reach. And that was just like a whoosh, like watershed paradigm shift moment. And once I really embraced that and kind of settled into that, everything opened up. It was like, oh, okay. So I can't get it wrong because I'm me and I'm being me. So no one else knows how to do that. And so if I just sit into that and just relax into that, uh, it opens up so many doors and so many ways to just relax.
That is so beautiful. It's so perfectly said. You can't get it wrong because you're being yourself, and no one else could do that. And you're the
Yep.
only one who could do that right.
And that took away a huge fear, right? Because one of my biggest fears is quote unquote being wrong in front of people or being caught being wrong. And when I was like, well, yeah, you can get better and you can work on your skills, but you can't get this ultimately wrong. I was like, oh, easy. All right, cakewalk. Sign me up for the next podcast.
So this brings me to the last point I wanted to talk about, and that is how um, it's it's easy to stay in our comfort zone, and we don't fail when we're in that comfort zone, but our best life lives on the edges of that comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So would you mind just speaking to that about why staying comfortable isn't really the best life we can have?
I mean, we're here to reach the top of our potential. So my worldview is we all have unique talents and gifts and skill sets and inclinations, and our job is to be a good steward of that and to optimize and maximize that for service of others. And so if you're playing small, you're not doing your job. You're not doing all that you're supposed to do, and other people are missing out because of that. And so you need to step back and say, hey, what's my mission? What's my purpose? Get really aligned with that, and then go as far as you can in that. And it's exciting and it's fun and it's challenging. And that's what we're meant to do, I believe. And I think if everyone in the world, if you just think about it, if everyone in the world were operating, in their talent and to the max of their potential, or even just a little bit closer, if everyone was doing that for a day, the world would be a different place, just materially, fundamentally a different place. And
Yeah.
so doing your part in that is your responsibility, but it's also fun and exciting and enthusiastic. So I would say tap into all that and tap into something meaningful and fulfilling.
Yeah. Yeah. God doesn't need us to play small.
No.
We're
Yeah.
not we're not doing him any favors. We're not doing the world any favors by playing small.
Yeah. I think too, there's lots of quotes that are coming to mind, like, your yes is in the land of no. So you have to go and get your no's to get your yes. Um, what else is coming to mind? Yeah, your talents are too small, are too big to play small with. You've got
Yeah.
to go, you've got to grow them. So other people are waiting for it, to be
Other
honest.
other people are waiting for it. Yeah. And
Mhm.
if we don't push our limits to see who we can become, we're letting the world down. We're letting those
Yeah,
people who
yeah,
need
because
us down.
that's a great point. Because people they say, are more motivated when others are concerned than when it's just them. So, hey, if someone is depending on me, I'm going to go above and beyond anything that I thought was possible. So if you've put it in that frame, then it's just fuel. It's
That-
fuel for you.
That's how I started the podcast.
That's
It's how,
awesome.
it's how I wrote the book. It was, what if this message could actually save someone's life and I didn't publish it?
Yeah.
And then they died. Literally, like, this is where I went with myself. Like, literally, I could have prevented somebody taking their life if I had put my message out there. So
Yeah.
how selfish of me to let my fear get in the way of that.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example of, you turn the lens outward. So instead of making it all about you and you're very inward about it, you say, okay, make myself small and make other people big. What's the best way to serve them? And that even goes with, like, my small example of public speaking, when I was like, me, I. Instead, like, hey, my job is to take care of my audience. Whoever I'm
Mm.
speaking to, my job is to take care of them and give them valuable information, and hopefully, you know, touch them and inspire them in certain ways. And so in that regard, it's all about them. It's nothing to do with me. It's all about them. And so when my focus goes that way, it all falls into place. And I think that's the same principle you were just describing, where, hey, when we have our mission, and, like, yes, we uh, discern that and settle into that and form that, but your focus is outward. Your focus is on other people and how that serves your family and community, and your work world, your profession, and the world at large. So yeah, focus outward.
Yeah, and same with social anxiety, right? So sometimes I'll have social anxiety when I go into a huge group of people that I don't know. And it's that same fear. Are they going to judge me? Am I not going to say the right thing or be the right thing? And every time I feel that feeling, I flip it and say, no, doesn't matter what I say or what they think of me. My pride, my ego is really not what this is about. If I can show up and just be a loving energy who maybe listens to them and cares for them in a way that other people haven't done today, that's enough.
Yeah.
And then I don't have this social anxiety, because I'm like, it doesn't matter what they think of me. If they think that I'm, total loser, it's all right. No big deal. It won't affect me at all. But if I don't go and show up and pour into somebody, who knows? Maybe they're having a tough time this week.
I have the same experience when I walk into a giant conference room, to network. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no. But I go through something similar, which is, first of all, um, there's many people like me who can relate and are
Or
like, oh,
most people.
yeah, yeah. So it's like, oh, you're endearing, the fact that you're not as outgoing. And secondly, it's focusing on what I can control. So if I go into that networking conference, right, and say, okay, to be successful or to win this conference, I have to have everyone like me and have a good impression of me. Well, I just gave away all of my agency and all of my control.
Yeah.
Whereas if I go, all right, Emily, like, your job is to be as open with people and be as engaging with people as you can and just really sit into being yourself, like, that's a win. So if I go out and do that, then I can say, all right, how did I do? I was pretty successful at that. And it has nothing to do with the people's perception of me.
Wow. I love redefining the win. So I would redefine a win for myself of, I go into this networking event and it is those, and there's just, I don't think anyone likes them. I think it's all like, we all just do them because we're supposed to do them. Maybe there's that one or two oddballs that loves it. But if I could, if I could be myself, I love that. I'm going to steal that from you. If I could just be myself and keep peace in my mind and have joy,
Yeah.
this was a win. So a peaceful mind, joy in my heart, and be myself. And it doesn't matter how else the night goes. That's a win.
And if you focus on that, I can guarantee you you will show up differently and that will exude out of you, you know? People will pick up on oh, like okay, Matt kind of knows who he is and what he's about, and people will be drawn to you. So it pulls people towards you.
So I just loved this conversation, and what a cool topic that we actually never fail. We're either succeeding or we're learning, and it's always this upward loop to the right. If you want a copy of Emily's download on this failure loop, just go to goodmoodshow.com and sign up for the newsletter, and we will email it out to you this week. Emily, there's going to be people that are like, man, I want to learn from her. I want to be in her world. How do people get in touch with you?
Certainly. It's my website's probably the best way to get a hold of me. So that's www.nextlevel.coach. So next level, all one word, .coach. And Matt, you've kindly offered to share the PDF download with your folks too. So appreciate that. My contact info will be on there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your awesome wisdom. You were a total success today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been awesome to be on your show and just have a really nice, genuine conversation. So you're a great host, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.